Advanced Innovation Group, LA 9001. Through this video, we shall attempt to explain the auditable component of the ISO 9001 Clause 7.1. Clause 7 support, 7.1 resources, 7.1.1 general. Step-by-step audit guide for Clause 7.1.1. General resources. 1. Understand the context. Before auditing, know the organization's key processes and QMS structure, resource-intensive areas, people, equipment, software, training, infrastructure, outsourced processes or external dependencies. 2. Key requirements of Clause 7.1.1. Requirement, what it means. Provide resources for QMS. Resources should support establishing and improving QMS processes, includes people, infrastructure, training, software, equipment, etc. Consider internal capabilities. Evaluate what the organization can handle in-house. Consider external needs. Identify what must be outsourced or purchased. 3 sample audit questions. Area, questions to ask. QMS needs. What are the key resources required to implement and maintain your QMS? How were these identified? Internal capabilities. What internal resources are available to meet these needs? Are there any known limitations? External providers. What services or products are sourced externally? Why? How are these providers managed? Resource planning. How do you ensure resource needs are continuously assessed, e.g., during management review or planning? 4. Evidence to look for. Requirement. Evidence examples. Internal resource capability, staff skill matrices, workload analysis, equipment logs, external resource identification, contracts, supplier evaluation records, outsourcing agreements, resource planning records, management review minutes, strategic plans, budgeting documents, QMS maintenance/improvement, continual improvement plans, training logs, system upgrade plans. 5. Link to other clauses. Clause 7.1.2 to 7.1.5 further break down resources, e.g., people, infrastructure, environment, monitoring resources. Clause 8.4 covers control of externally provided processes. Ensure external resources align with that. Audit checklist for Clause 7.1.1. Audit item description. QMS resource needs identified. Based on process requirements and continual improvement goals, internal resources assessed, capabilities and constraints considered, external resources identified, clear rationale for outsourcing or procurement, evidence of resource provision, budget, procurement, staffing, infrastructure, continual review of needs, discussed in management reviews or planning activities. Pro tip for auditors, choose a specific process, e.g., production, design, customer service, and ask, what resources are critical here? Are internal resources sufficient? Have there been any issues due to resource gaps? This helps evaluate how well resource planning supports process effectiveness. Audit Guide, Clause 7.1.2 to 7.1.4. Clause 7.1.2, People. Audit focus. Ensure the organization has sufficient and competent people to implement the quality management system, operate and control processes. What to check. Item, evidence/examples, needs identification, role descriptions, workforce planning documents, competence, training records, certifications, experience, sufficiency, staffing plans, workload distribution, interviews with staff, responsiveness, plans for absenteeism, turnover, or sudden demand surges. Sample audit. Questions: how do you determine how many people are needed for each process? What skills or qualifications are required for these roles? What actions are taken if there are gaps in people availability or skills? Clause 7.1.3, Infrastructure. Audit focus. Check that the organization has identified infrastructure needs, provides and maintains infrastructure to support operations and conformity of output. To check, infrastructure type, evidence to review, buildings utilities, facility layout, maintenance logs, equipment, HW/SW, calibration records, preventive maintenance schedules, software licenses, transport, vehicle logs, outsourcing contracts, tracking systems, ICT, server logs, network diagrams, communication tools, IT support logs. Sample audit. Questions. What infrastructure is needed for this process? How do you ensure it is maintained and updated? Are there any recent upgrades or breakdowns? How were they handled? Clause 7.1.4, Environment for the operation of processes, audit focus, ensure that the organization has identified and maintains a suitable work environment, considers physical, social, and psychological factors as appropriate. What to check? Infrastructure type, evidence to review, physical, air conditioning, lighting, noise levels, hygiene standards, social, anti-discrimination policies, code of conduct, team behavior, psychological, stress management programs, employee assistance programs, workload balance. Sample audit questions. What environmental conditions are necessary for this process to operate effectively? How do you monitor and control those conditions? Are there any employee feedback systems to address environmental concerns? Combined audit checklist 7.1.2 to 7.1.4. What environmental conditions are necessary for this process to operate effectively? How do you monitor and control those conditions? Are there any employee feedback systems to address environmental concerns? Combined audit checklist 7.1.2 to 7.1.4. Clause. Audit point. Evidence. 7.1.2. People identified and competent. Role descriptions. Training records. 7.1.2. People provided in a sufficient number. Shift schedules. HR planning. 7.1.3. Infrastructure identified and provided. Facility map. Equipment lists. 7.1.3. Maintenance activities carried out. Maintenance logs, calibration reports. 7.1.4. Environment suitable for operation, environmental monitoring records, employee surveys. 7.1.4. Consideration of physical, social, psychological factors, safety audits, HR initiatives. Audit guide. Clause 7.1.5, Monitoring and Measuring Resources. Clause 7.1.5.1, General. Audit focus. Resources for monitoring measuring are identified, provided, and maintained. Results are valid and reliable. Documented evidence exists showing these resources are fit for purpose. What to check? Requirement. Examples of evidence. Suitability of resources. Selection criteria. Equipment specifications, maintenance of equipment, maintenance logs, service reports, documented information on fitness, calibration certificates, performance validation records. Sample audit. Questions. What equipment or tools are used to verify product service conformity? How do you ensure these tools are suitable for their intended use? How do you maintain them to ensure ongoing reliability? Clause 7.1.5.2. Measurement traceability. Audit. Focus. When traceability is required or critical, equipment must be calibrated or verified against recognized standards, identified to know calibration status, protected from unauthorized changes or damage. What to check? Requirement, examples of evidence, calibration or verification identification, tags, labels, barcodes showing calibration status, protection, lockout systems, secure storage, SOPs preventing tampering, action on failed calibration, non-conformance reports, reinspection records, impact assessment on previous results. Sample audit questions 7.1.5.2. Which instruments require traceable calibration? Why? Show me a calibration certificate. Is it traceable to a national, international standard? How is equipment status identified, e.g., calibrated, due for calibration? What happens when a measuring device is found out of tolerance? Audit checklist. Summary Clause 7.1.5. Clause. Audit point. Evidence. 7.1.5.1. Suitable monitoring, measuring resources provided. Equipment lists, specifications. 7.1.5.1. Maintain for fitness of purpose. Maintenance records, checks. 7.1.5.1. Documented information retained. Calibration history, performance checks. 7.1.5.2. Calibrated, just verified as required. Traceable calibration certificates. 7.1.5.2. Equipment clearly identified. Calibration tags, barcodes. 7.1.5.2. Protected from damage adjustment. Storage procedures, restricted access. Pro tip for auditors. Pick a calibrated instrument and follow its calibration trail. Is it traceable? Is its status clearly marked? Is it locked from adjustments? What would the organization do if it had failed a calibration check? Audit Guide. Clause 7.1.6. Organizational knowledge. Understand the core requirement. The organization must determine what knowledge is essential for process operation and conformity of output. Ensure this knowledge is maintained, not lost when people leave, available when needed. Proactively address gaps in knowledge due to changing needs, new tech, regulations, markets. Audit checklist summary. Clause 7.1.5. Audit focus area. Sample audit questions. Evidence to look for. Identifying knowledge. What knowledge is essential for your key processes? How do you identify it? Process documentation, SOPs, skill matrices. Maintaining knowledge. How is critical knowledge retained if an experienced employee leaves? Knowledge transfer programs, mentoring, documentation practices. Making it available. How do others in the organization access important process or product knowledge? Intranet, shared folders, training materials, FAQs. Adapting to change. How do you identify new knowledge needs, GG, due to a change in tech or customer? Management review outputs, training needs analysis, industry benchmarking. Sources of knowledge. What internal and external sources of knowledge do you rely on? Lessons learned database, benchmarking reports, customer feedback, consultant reports. 3. Internal and external sources to check. Internal sources, external sources, employee experience, industry standards and regulations, lessons learned, benchmarking and best practices, improvement projects, supplier and customer input, process audits, competitor analysis, training records, external training or consultants. 4. Audit trail tip. Choose a process, product development or customer service, and trace. What knowledge is needed to run it? Where is that knowledge stored? How is it updated? Who ensures it is shared with relevant people? Audit checklist summary for clause 7.1.6. Audit point. Description. Knowledge needs identified. Specific to processes and conformity of outputs. Knowledge maintained. Backups. Documentation. Cross-training. Succession planning. Knowledge made available. Easy access via digital/physical systems. Changing needs addressed. New knowledge acquired. Trends tracked. Internal and external sources considered. Comprehensive view of knowledge gathering. Bonus tip. Look out for informal knowledge like tribal knowledge or expert shortcuts. Ask how this is captured and shared so it's not lost when staff leave.